In 2003, I lived in Berlin as part of Tom Sax's Nutsies installation at the Deutsche Guggenheim. I was 28 years old, and I had a social life there. And through friends, I met a bunch of Americans who were living in Berlin at the time. This was 2 years after September 11th, 2001, and I began filming these interviews on September 11th, 2003.
How long have you lived here?
You're in the track.
That was Brandon. I've been in Berlin almost 5 years. And I'm not telling people that it's that long because my German is bad. So the story goes everywhere between 2.5 and 3.5 years. And then I look like an overachiever.
So, why did you move here?
Because I was in New York and I was doing a lot of stuff there, but I was also working way too much and trying to make my way. And the two things were very difficult together, and I got burnt out. And I went camping upstate New York for like 5 months, and I taught theater to young adults in upstate New York. And then I went back to New York City and I met this guy from Berlin, and I told him that I just wanted to make shows. And he said, "You should come to Berlin, you'd like it." And so I did. 2 months later, and then I made my first show a month and a half after that. And so like everybody who I first met in Berlin are people that I said, "Have you ever been in a show before? Would you like to be in a show?" And then also people for a hammer or everything for free. I didn't make the show with any money.
So, you just moved there?
So I worked for 2 months. I lived by my parents. I worked for 2 months at this restaurant, vegetarian snacks. And then I left, then I came here without ever seeing it. I stayed at Zoologische Garden about 10 years ago. When I lived in Prague, I took a train around Europe, and then I was coming back, and I had no money, so I slept at Zoologische Garden the first time I was ever in Berlin. And so now when I walk through it, it's a totally different place, but my first memory of Berlin is a really dark, dirty place that I slept in, and they were really rude to me. So I always hated Berlin before, but then
What's Zoologische Garden?
that's the big station where lots of hookers hang out, and also like where just lots of people go in and out. It's a hub station.
So did that make you afraid to come back to New Berlin?
I just set my first thought, just like Brussels. I'm like, I hate it. Because I was at Brussels at 4 o'clock in the morning and I got kicked off of a train one time. And so I had to be there for like the darkest, coldest hours of Brussels. And I hated the town, so I haven't been back there since. That's how Berlin was, except certain things were pointing to Berlin for me 5 years ago. So I had to follow those patterns and come.
And so what all are you doing here now?
So I've produced my own plays. I've like gone into the canon and I've done like commercials and film in German, and like I started music and then had a band, and then that project keeps going on. Like everything I've ever wanted to do, I've been able to do here because I was able to somehow. Like I had a good family supporting me. So, and yeah, lots of good spaces. Yeah, energy. You can really, it's much easier to create the canon here in Berlin than it was in New York. You feel like you're just part of the spiral in New York, but in Berlin you feel like your energy can make a difference. And you see it actually very quickly. When you put your energy out, you see the room change. And that's pretty exciting.
When did you first experience that?
When did I first experience the room change? It wasn't my first show. For my first show, this woman sat in the front row. I put signs all over that said "Work in Progress." The people are alone. That was the name of the show. The people are alone. And this woman was sitting in the front row writing in a notebook, and I'm like, oh, a reviewer came. And so then after the show, I'm like, so are you from a newspaper? Da, da, da. And she was like, no, it said "Work in Progress. I thought you'd want some notes." And then she starts going through, and she's giving me really, really like detailed notes about, you know, I don't think you should talk so long. I think da-da-da, da-da-da. I'm like, okay. So that was good. It taught me a lot. But the first time it ever really happened, I don't know, probably like when I did drag the first time, which was also the first few months I was in town. And I did I did it for Jerome Castell, and he only knew I was from New York, and he assumed I was a drag queen, although I wasn't. But he booked me for the show, so I was going to do drag, I guess. And so I did, maybe this time I'll be lucky. Maybe this time he'll stay. And the whole time I have a noose around my neck, and I'm just about ready to jump. And then I do at the end, and I hang there and finish the song. And so that they liked. And that was like the first time that, because I had so much makeup on, I was really in a mask. And so I was putting on a big show. That was the first time I really put on a big show. And then after that was like, I don't know. I made a commercial one time, and I kind of created the end of it, and they said that's what saved the commercial, and everybody applauded and took the robe off of the star and put it on me, and that was actually the coolest day. Like, as far as like, that's what I want. Just do what you want, and then everybody's like, that's exactly what we needed.
What was the commercial?
It was for this power company. Actually, it was on TV all the time. The next guy that got my job was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I'm sure he got paid a lot more. But I was the first one that did the commercials in that series, and it was seen by everybody, and it's been played, and everybody knows it, and like, but I just don't want to keep playing that character, so I haven't pushed that, because it was a really like femmy character. Like, oh, yeah. And I don't have a problem with that, but I don't want to keep playing big gay characters, just because I don't want to play a cliche. So they would have to have something that I could play that they'd want to work with me on. I don't want to keep playing cliches, so.
And aside from the acting and performing, do you have other jobs?
Yeah. Right now I've got 3 jobs, and I guess jobs are really hard to get by in Berlin unless you live here and you know people, and then you just put the word out. As far as I know, that's just how it happens. It's just all by how you know people. And then you don't really have to worry about too much of anything. Like, I'll never starve, I'll never be homeless, because I live here and I've got a big family here, so. But I work in 2 bars and 1 restaurant, and then one of the bars I'm working at because they give me a new performance space. So I'm making money in the meantime until I work there, and then I bring that down, and yeah.
How is it for you going from like New York, where you get $1 tip every time you get a drink, to hopefully getting
20 cents?
50 cents. Hopefully. How's that?
Well, you get a higher hourly wage here, because in New York you make like, you know, 4 or something like that, and here you make like 7 or 10 or whatever. You can't do anything about it. I mean, I'm an American, so I'm serving. And so, of course, I'm serving more. I'm like, hey, here you go. Do you need another one? And in Germany, they never ask, do you need another one? They'll just, oh, you need something? You know, and your glass can be empty for a half hour, but you have to ask them for it. And so just that little extra American thing moves the money a little bit faster. And so, like, kind of feel my difference there. I don't even remember the question.
But you answered it exquisitely.
Okay.
Where were you on September 11th 2 years ago?
I was getting this tattoo that says Forever Meet. I was getting it because my brother and I were always going to get it together, and he was out of town for 1 year and I missed him. And then he told me that he and his wife were going to have their first baby, and then she had a miscarriage in the toilet. And she's like, well, there it is. And they looked at it and they named him Meat. So the tattoo was going to say Meat Forever, and then I changed it Forever Meat, and that's for my first nephew. While I was getting that done, then my father had a crush on my tattoo artist, and she liked him for some weird reason, because my father came and visited, and then he stayed for a year. And she had a gold tooth and a pig in her armpit. And he came in with a couple beers, and I was like, hey, I was getting it done. And he's like, he told me what happened. Like, he's like, I think we need to go back to my house. And so we went back to his house and we watched TV for the next 8 hours and kept drinking beer. And then I didn't get my tattoo finished until 1 year later on September 11th. And so...
You finished it on September 11th.
No, actually I was supposed to get it finished today, but she and I couldn't hook up because I never got the color totally filled in and the shading done. But I only really wanted to do it on September 11th because I just never really feel like getting a tattoo anymore. That was the last time I felt like getting one. So I should finish it. Let's fix this real quick. Oh, did I do that?
No, just did it. No, it was the motorcycle. Mm-hmm.
Really? It's crazy.
I think that was a good cue for us to consider. What do you miss about home? Anything?
Convenience. Being able to just, because I could do damage on the telephone. Like, I could pick up the telephone and get myself 3 jobs, 5 appointments. I could do anything over the phone. I could make people think I have a lawyer. I've seen so many law shows. I can make people think that I know my shit. Here, I cannot do that. So, like, I really miss that, being able to work my rights. And, being able to sue everybody. I've never sued anybody, but just knowing that you can, I kind of miss that. And stores open late at night. And, God, I don't know. I don't really miss hearing English spoken around me because I have it with my friends. And besides that, it's like, it's funny. I don't know. Sometimes I don't really miss hearing things around me because I like kind of blocking it all out. So I haven't really seen TV, I don't read the newspapers, and I don't hear voices around me so much unless I listen for them. And so that has made my life very different than it could be. So I don't live in fear, and I think that's better. Because when I was in the States, I couldn't help but read the newspaper, watch the TV and everything. And the fear factor is just at an all-time high, and it's disgusting. And nothing will get finished that way. It'll get finished, but nothing will get done that way. So I like to keep a certain level of naivete. And so I can have that here and find out what I need to find out. There's people that pay attention. You're on the internet, So people tell me things, and then I figure if it's so important, I'll find out about it. Otherwise, then I prefer my ideas to be my ideas and to find out that there's a general pattern of things later instead of like jumping onto the pattern, I find a lot of my ideas fit into the pattern anyway, and that's nice. It feels like there's some kind of universal consciousness somehow through all the levels of media, through all the levels of borders and everything. There's a consciousness. So if I have something if I'm thinking Scooby-Doo and then all of a sudden a movie comes out which is Scooby-Doo, we're totally different ideas, but for some reason we both felt that, and then there's other deeper things, but that comes up. It's cool.
So from the small amount of media that you have absorbed recently, has anything stood out in your mind?
That was only when I was in New York, and I was there in February, and that was during the Orange Alert or whatever, like the huge fear factor they put over New York, and then the CNN. And then also Hot or Not, this new TV show, and all these reality shows, and Help Me, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. These things changed my life in some weird way. Because it made me realize that the truth is stranger than fiction. And it's just a fact. And the truth is fiction. And that's just a fact. And so I just need to go back to my bubble. I don't know. You get enough inside of your bubble. You can work with enough people. You can put your message out, unless you want to be Martin Luther King and get shot, which I'm not ready for yet. But I'm happy in my bubble.
So here in Berlin, what do you think of, aside from your personal projects, What do you think of the art and performance scene
In Berlin.
in Berlin? Yes.
When I first came here, I got really into dance because that seemed like more of a universal language, and there's a lot of really cool dance that happens here. They support it really well. One of the new people at the State Theater, the Schaubühne, she was most famous for dance, Sasha Waltz, and she came from the Sophiensäle where I've been working, and that's also a big dance theater. So there's a lot of dance happening, and I think it's really inspiring because it crosses so many borders, dance these days. And a lot of people coming from Amsterdam and Holland, they have nothing to worry about except for ideas. They don't. So it's nice. There's lots of ideas coming in. Theater is pretty much ruled by the big people, which are like big pictures, big money, long, big acting, like, you know, really big, like, acting. And film is on the opposite side where it's really naturalistic to the point of, like, I fell asleep, what did you say? So, like, now there's, like, something happening, which is happening in between, I hope, which is, like, what, you know, like, hopefully I'm part of, like, coming up with which is something natural, but it's something a little bit crazy also. And having this level, but like, yeah, visual art, there's a gallery scene. I think they're a bit pompous, but there's a lot of really good stuff. And more good people are coming to Berlin because it's becoming a force. And you can't turn on the TV anymore without something mentioning it. But it's not a money town. It's just a town that you have to put on your belt. And, you know, either you find your way here or you go through it and you love it, but you don't stay here. But it's something you have to put on your belt, but it'll never, it's not really a money town. Unless you're playing with the big money people, and then you could do that anywhere.
Describe some of your living spaces you've had here, how big they are, what the neighborhoods are like, the prices you've paid.
I've lived here 5 years and I've lived in 6 places. First place was a bedroom of that boy that told me to come to Berlin. You know. Next was a waiter who fell in love with me, who gave me his couch for 2 months until he fell too in love with me, and then I was homeless. And then I lived in a place for 2 months during Christmas, which was an Indian man's flat, which he rented only to keep his dry goods supplies, which is mango and rice and everything for his Indian catering, and also the place where he fucked his mistress. And so I stayed there. And then this other guy who really liked me had said he had a room, and I kept seeing him in a bar, and so I took his room. And then my brother came to Berlin. He lived with me in that room. And then I had a boyfriend that I met through that guy. And then he introduced me to Ruth and Alex, where you live now. And then I moved in there. And then Johnny moved in, another boyfriend. It's too detailed. And then he was a living nightmare, and so I moved out and I lived with a 40-year-old prostitute who was an alcoholic on the Ku'damm. And then she fell in love with me, and that became a nightmare. And then I lived with somebody else. And then we got our own flat, and I got a movie, so I was able to pay for everything. And then I bought a flat, and then we stayed there for 2 years. And then I just moved out, and now I live in Treptow in a 200 euro flat with one other person. I consolidated all of my articles, and I want my life to be a lot easier now. There it is.
There it is in a nutshell.
Yeah.
The flat we saw today?
No,
The blue one?
Who's Ron's roommate?
that's Noah.
That's my brother.
Wait, you're not? No, I'm just kidding. Where are you from? I guess we already knew.
Well, we're from Nebraska. Noah and I are from Nebraska. But then I've lived in like 8 places since then, and he's lived in like 5 places since then.
Were you in the Army kids or something? Or?
No.
Uh,
My mom's dad was in the Army, or Navy. He was an admiral, and Fidel Castro had bounty on his head.
How much?
I have no idea, but there was like these seals swimming up to the boat that they were getting down. And then also Oliver North was in my grandfather's graduating class that he taught. Like he remembered him, but he's dead now, long time.
So why were you moving around so much?
My parents had like, you know, mosquitoes in the britches, I don't know. They kept moving around, divorce, jobs. And then my mom always just, saw a better place with a better future, and so we always went there. And so now they've been in New York about 8 years, so, but I just kept moving on my own, so looking for places. And I've lived in good places. I went from Kansas, which was where I was stuck, and then I was free, and then I moved to Kansas City, and then I moved to Prague. And then I traveled all across Europe and lived in Barcelona very briefly for like 2 months, and then went back to the States and drove across the States and lived in San Francisco for 2 years, then New York for 2 years, then here for 5 years, almost. Crazy.
Jet setting gypsy.
And I don't know where to next. I really don't.
Do you foresee that next place happening anytime soon?
2 years. But I want to keep a place here, but I want something which is like close to America, but not in America, like Mexico or Canada, where I could come over for jobs, but I can live a cleaner life, where people are more honest, like in a real way. I want more life around me.
There's Vermont.
Yeah, there's all of this. Also, I mean, if I got myself a gay architect lover.
Yeah. Vermont's a little whack too. There's very
It's weird.
and local and.
Well, Pennsylvania also, if you're not picky, because it's beautiful. Like when I went camping, I was camping all during Indian summer, and so I was in Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. Like I was in 5 different states, just driving and camping during Indian summer, so nobody's camping. So I was really alone, and like, okay, what the fuck am I doing? Because in New York, I mean, I have a lot of talents. I just don't know what the fuck it is I do. And none of my talents make me good enough for anything. And so, yeah, it still took a little bit of time. But I've made a lot of things here, and a lot of things go. It's really, you could see if your energy can take you everywhere.
What would you say the most fabulous thing about Berlin is?
The underground. Berlin Underground is something that changes all the time, and it only comes through word of mouth. And then you go, and it's a very special conglomeration of pictures and tastes and sitting and music and everything together, company. And you realize what an amazing group of people are in one room, and that they didn't have that back in Kansas.
What is Berlin Underground?
Berlin Underground is, well, I mean, this is like, you know, a little spit on the mirror.
You just mean the underground culture?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was an event or something.
No.
Okay.
I mean,
It's the U-Bahn.
yeah, that's too much like people sitting and saying, where's the show? It's like,
Yeah.
it's something where you can never know.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing. You can never know when to say, I'm not going out tonight. Because it could be a really special night, and then it won't happen twice. And, you know, and these things are budding all the time, all over the place. You know?
That's the biggest thing I've noticed. I'm only here for 4 months. I'm like a poser, but it's the biggest thing I've noticed is like the spontaneity and like the makeshift handmade kind of bricolage of the whole thing, and that's really interesting.
It went along with my aesthetic, because my theater aesthetic is like high effect but cheaply made, you know. It's like the most comfort, the most beautiful, whatever, but with what I have, which is nothing. And that's how it's always been. But even when I have a lot of money, I still like to keep that idea of like, you know, the beautiful things about trash, you know. Things are not thrown out and just left. They're like brought back in and used in another way. And that's very Berlin.
I feel like we pretty much got
I
everything.
think we're good.